Red Cloud Financial Services is your preeminent source for mining industry opportunities. The team provides a unique tailored marketing program dedicated to reaching the right people from its mining-focused global network, giving clients access to industry-leading events and conferences, retail and institutional marketing, plus an in-house growth-driven digital agency. Red Cloud Financial Services has access to some of the mining industry's most notable companies and CEOs.
Hello and welcome to this live silver showcase brought to you by Red Cloud Financial. I am your host, Mark Bunting. I host the videos over at Red Cloud TV, RCTV. We have a great show lined up for you today. Thank you very much for being with us. We have 5 company presentations where executives from these various companies will lay out their projects and prospects. Following that, we'll have a panel discussion with 4 of our participants where we'll take a look at the macro picture for silver. We'll look at supply and demand. We'll ask the question, is this recent spike we've seen, although it's cooled off in the last while, the start of one of those explosive moves that silver is famous for? Infrequently, it does it, but 79.80, if you're old enough to remember that or read about it when the Hunt brothers tried to dominate the market, to corner the market. Had that big spike then, and then in more recent years, 2010, 2011. So there are a lot of false dawns with silver with these types of moves, but maybe this is the real deal, and we're going to ask that question as well. Now, in terms of a table setter for you on silver, we are pleased to be joined by Taylor Combaluzier. He is the VP of Equity Research at Red Cloud Securities. He's going to look at silver, macro, micro, all the factors that move the price. He's also got a few silver ideas for you in terms of companies as well. So let's bring in Taylor Combaluzier, and he's going to set the table for us. Taylor, take it away.
Great. Thanks for the intro, Mark. So today I'll tell you a few key reasons why we have a positive view on the silver market going forward. So to set the stage, I'm just going to talk about where we're at right now. Today, the silver price is sitting above $27 per ounce, and the gold-silver ratio is at about 86-1. We've seen a big shift over the past month, as previously the silver price was fluctuating around the $23 per ounce level in early 2024. Meanwhile, the gold to silver ratio has come down from a high of 91-1 as the silver price began rising following gold's earlier increase. Although the silver price is influenced by many of the same drivers as gold, it typically lags the gold price and has greater price volatility. It's largely driven by smaller market size compared to that of gold. The still elevated gold to silver ratio, though, does suggest that silver is increasingly inexpensive compared to gold when looking at the long-term historical average ratio of 69-1. Today, the gold to silver ratio is also above the average of 80-1, which has been the average since the fall of 2014, when the price of silver decoupled from gold as investors broadly wrote off silver as just a derivative of an industrial metal. Turning to more of a market outlook now, according to the Silver Institute, this year there is expected to be a silver deficit of 215 million ounces. That's an increase of 17% year over year. Strong demand is expected due to booming industrial fabrication and gains in photovoltaic applications that's growing at a 10% compound annual growth rate, according to Bloomberg. On the supply side, mine production is expected to fall by about 0.8% to 824 million ounces in 2024, and that's largely due to a decrease in Peruvian output stemming from temporary mine closures. Supply shortages are expected to remain going forward given stagnant mine production. That's forecasted between 850 to 900 million ounces per year until 2026. As well, there is expected to be increasing industrial demand that's causing that supply shortage, that shortfall. The global march towards increased connectivity, green energy, and transportation has also added new sources of demand for silver. As such, industrial demand is forecast to increase 9% this year due to structural growth in the green economy applications, as I said earlier, photovoltaics, but as well as power grids, 5G networks, consumer electronics, and greater vehicle output. We do believe the demand for silver will continue to increase over the long term. However, forecasted decline in mine supply 4 or 5 years out suggests a looming shortfall unless new reserves are delineated and added to the current project pipeline that's anticipated to come online. Given the favorable long-term outlook for silver demand and a likely tailwind for higher silver prices once the Fed begins cutting rates, we do believe that now is the time for investors to start looking at junior silver explorers and developers again. That said, I did want to take a bit more of a deeper dive into the mine supply side of the equation, given that we're talking with numerous exploration and earlier stage companies. In 2023, that mine's silver supply fell 1% year over year, while this year it's also expected to fall further down to 824 million ounces. Mexico does remain the dominant silver producing country, which it does produce nearly twice as much as the next largest producer, China. Rounding out the top 3 is Peru. Notably, about 72% of annual silver mine supply was produced as byproduct in 2023. The share of production from primary silver mines was unchanged in 2023, resting at 28%. Lead and zinc operations are the largest source of silver mine supply, followed by copper mines and then gold mines on the byproduct side. In recent years, the decline in output from primary silver mines has continued, and that's protracting a longer-term trend. As I said earlier, Peru has seen output fall significantly from its primary mines, and that's essentially due to community protests, supply chain challenges, social unrest, and operational issues. As that 72% of mine supply is mined as a byproduct, it is largely unresponsive to changes in the silver price. Any supply response to market deficits would likely come from primary silver mines then. On the cost side, total cash costs did increase 61% in 2023, while all-in sustaining costs increased by 25% to over $17 per ounce, and that was driven by inflationary pressure. A higher all-in sustaining cost is also forecasted for this year, given the prospect of easing monetary policy that could help alleviate the all-in sustaining costs, though that would be offset by higher oil and energy prices, as we've seen those prices increasing. Similarly, there would be an impact from decreasing zinc prices, and that should lower byproduct credits from that metal, though higher gold prices should help operations that produce byproduct gold. So see how that balances out. And then lastly, on the deeper dive side of things, looking at global reserves, those continue to decrease year over year. They were down 5% last year to 3.5 billion ounces, and that was due to depletion, as well as changing economic assumptions that overtook the resource conversion and resulted in a decline. However, I would note that total resources and reserves did increase 4% year over year last year, and that was driven by successful exploration and expansion studies. So with all that said, I would like to now turn and talk a little bit about my top picks for investing in silver. These are in no particular order. My first top pick is BlackRock Silver. We have a buy rating and $1.40 target price. The company has completed extensive exploration work over the last 4 years and delineated over 100 million ounces of silver equivalent of high-grade inferred resources as a Tonopah West project. It did recently acquire 100% ownership of that project, which we do view as a positive de-risking step. We do look forward to results from metallurgical, engineering, and hydrological studies that could form the basis of a future PEA. My second top pick is Cutney Silver. We have a buy rating and $3.50 target price. Cutney offers investors exposure to a highly undervalued portfolio of high-grade advanced exploration projects. It is backstopped by over 281 million ounces of silver equivalent resources. We do believe there is excellent potential to delineate a large high-grade maiden resource at its flagship Columba project to add to this resource base. A 5,000-meter drill program is underway there, which could potentially lead to that resource expansion. And my last topic that I'll mention today is GR Silver, for which we have a buy rating and 80-cent target price. The company's flagship Plomosas project hosts 3 past-producing mines and plenty of exploration targets with existing infrastructure facilities along 75 kilometers of a prospective trend in the prominent silver producing region of Mexico. The company did deliver an updated resource in 2023 that beat expectations, outlining 150 million ounces of silver equivalent. We do believe Plomosas remains highly prospective and that additional high-grade discoveries could be made along the 6-kilometer contact at the San Marcial area. So to wrap things up, we do have an optimistic outlook on the silver space, both in the short and long term. In the short term, we do expect the interplay between geopolitical tensions that drive safe haven demand, as well as global economic activity that drives the industrial demand side, to be the key influences on the silver price. Longer term, we continue to believe that mine supply constraints and ever-increasing silver demand for green energy applications will continue to support the silver price. With that, I will turn it back to you, Mark.
All right. Thank you very much, Taylor, for that perspective and context on silver. That's Taylor Combaluzzi, VP of Equity Research at Red Cloud Securities. That was a nice preview for us as we get into our presentations, which are coming just right now, just around the corner. Those top ideas, once again, from Taylor, BlackRock Silver, Cutney Silver, which we'll be hearing from in just a while on this show, and GR Silver. Now, to kick off our company presentations, we have Andean Precious Metals. This company owns a processing plant in Bolivia. It has a producing mine in California. It's a profitable company, and its most recent quarter saw record revenue. So let's bring in the Chief Financial Officer to do the honors here with about a 10-minute presentation, Juan Carlos Sandoval. Juan Carlos, thank you very much for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark, and wanted to thank Red Cloud for the invitation. Appreciate very much being here. All right, let's get started. Well, thank you. And obviously, before I get started, I would like to call out our disclaimers and forward-looking information on slide 2 and 3. As well, all dollar amounts referred to in this presentation are US dollars unless it's indicated otherwise. Thank you for joining to hear the Andean story. Our vision is to be a mid-tier producer, precious metals producer, and we believe there are 4 cornerstones in place to achieve this goal. First, we have a history of positive performance and are focused on driving cash flows and profitability. Second, we have an attractive organic growth profile with many opportunities up ahead. Third, we have an M&A mandate. We made 1 acquisition towards the end of last year, and we continue to scout the Americas for our next transaction. Finally, we have a solid foundation for growth. We have a strong and liquid balance sheet. We have no streams, no warrants, and approximately $72 million in liquid assets, including approximately $65 million in cash and a negative net debt. These amounts are very manageable from our perspective. We are headquartered in Monterrey, Mexico, and have, as Mark mentioned, we have 2 producing assets. We have our San Bartolome, which is our flagship operation in Bolivia, and our latest acquisition, which happened late November of last year, a Golden Queen in the US. Regardless of the geography, our focus is the same: growth production, maximize cash generation, keep our workers safety and healthy and safe, and generate value to our local communities, obviously, and generate value to our ultimate shareholders. Moving on to, let me give you an explanation of San Bart. San Bartolome is situated in the Cerro Rico area, which is one of the world's richest regions for silver in the world. Not only does Bolivia have an abundance of undiscovered geological endowment, but it also has a strong culture for mining, with skilled workers, a modern mining code, and a simple tax royalty structure. Bolivia is truly one of the best kept secrets in the mining industry. Our San Bart plant is located in southwest Bolivia, near the city of Potosí. The mill, with a design capacity of 1.8 million tons, has produced approximately 5 million ounces of silver doré bars every year since commissioning. Our plant directly employs about 230 employees. Additionally, Sambard employs many contractors and generates thousands of jobs in the local community. The plant was built by Coeur Mining in 2008 for about $190 million. You definitely couldn't buy a plant of this stature for this amount in current days. I am pleased to say that in 2023, Sambard became ISO and RMI certified. Let me just go back one. I'm sorry. Sorry. When we originally acquired Sambard in 2018, the mine was expected to run out of ore and reach the end of its mine life in 2020. So that was less than 2 years of life of mine. In anticipation of this, we started to increase third-party material purchases to replace our own ore in the ground. Last year, we signed contracts for approximately 1 million tons of feedstock. And as of the beginning of this 2024, we have fully transitioned to processing only third-party materials. Our new mineral reserve and resource estimate announced at the end of December includes third-party material under the mid to long-term contract, as well as our tailings materials from our fines deposit facility. The FDF contains untreated fine-grained plant feed, which we expect to be processing as early as next month. This is low grade, but as you know, at current prices, this will become a very profitable business. Our latest reserve and resource update, the operating life of Sambard is extended to at least 2028. This surpasses the original life by more than 8 years. Moving on, there are many opportunities for growth in Bolivia, and our roadmap is comprised of 4 avenues. Firstly, we are working hard to capitalize on our existing strength in the country and in partnership with government by securing new deposits of oxides under control of the state mining company. Secondly, we continue to focus on signing new purchase contracts for third-party ore. Next, we are close to completing, as I mentioned, our tailings recovery project, and we have substantial volume of material in our tailings dam, which contains significant silver. Finally, we still see a lot of M&A opportunities in the country. We love Bolivia, and we plan to continue doing business there. Our sustainability program in Bolivia is of a very high standard. We maintain a strong social license, having garnered trust and support with our stakeholders. According to an independent socio-economic impact study undertaken by the Oxford Economics in 2021, we have a GDP multiplier of 2.1, meaning that Sambard makes a direct contribution of roughly $70 million to Bolivian GDP, and has a further indirect boost to GDP of more than $140 million. That's quite significant for Bolivia. Most of our employees and contractors are Bolivian, and we are one of the largest royalty payers in the sector. Now let me move very quickly to Golden Queen, which is our most recent acquisition. We closed this deal November of last year. Golden Queen has been operating the Soledad Mountain gold and silver mine in Kern County, California for about 8 years now. It's important to highlight that it is a fully permitted asset with a conventional open pit heap leach operation that has been a model of consistency over the years. That's the reason why we felt comfortable investing in California. We don't need new permits. It's fully permitted, and we can operate for years to come. The mine is conveniently located between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, and is easily reached via paved roads and well-traveled roads. The mine has around 250 workers and is very close to the city of Mojave. We recently as well updated our resource estimate for Golden Queen and have at least another 5 years of life of mine. The acquisition of Golden Queen was an outstanding opportunity to add another high-quality producing asset to the Andean portfolio and to create a multi-jurisdictional precious metals producer with diversified production, exposure to both gold and silver, and cash flow generation. Like our assets in Bolivia, we believe Golden Queen has plenty of upside potential through growing the reserve and resource base, increasing production, lowering cost, and improving cash flows through mine optimization, block model improvement for our process, and production efficiencies. Exploration drilling around the pit within the Golden Queen properties. And we also view Golden Queen as an entry point into the US, as we see other interesting opportunities that will complement Golden Queen's operation. I'm going to try to wrap it up. Golden Queen strengthens our capability as a diversified precious metals producer, significantly increasing our anticipated silver equivalent production in coming years. Sambard has been operating continuously since 2008, producing an average of 5 million ounces of silver a year. And based on our 2P reserves estimate, Golden Queen, we expect life of mine to have an annual production of between 60 to 65,000 ounces, 60,000 ounces of gold, and a little bit more than 400,000 ounces of silver a year. While stacking ore stops in 2029, work at Golden Queen is expected to continue for approximately another 35-40 years via the sale of waste rock for aggregate, construction, and landscape material in the regional area. We believe our stock is poised for a re-rate. There is obvious disparity in our value relative to our peer group. This slide highlights how we can move up relative to our peer group post-acquisition with a potential re-rate. Factors that support a re-rate include alleviation of a single asset risk, increased production, increased mineral reserves and resource base, diversification of geopolitical risk, and significant increase in gold exposure. As Golden Queen proves itself, we expect our value to catch up with our peer group. To sum things up, we have proven teams on both sides of the equator to create value for our shareholders. We now have producing assets with significant upside in 2 jurisdictions, well known for leadership in precious metals production. And we have strong expectations of operational enhancements and extended production at both mines. Underpinning our growth, we are focused on maintaining a strong balance sheet as we follow the pathway to becoming a mid-tier producer. I think that wraps it up. Thank you for your time. Thank you, guys.
And thank you for your time today, Juan Carlos, from Andean Precious Metals CFO, Juan Carlos Sandoval. Thanks again. We'll move it along now to our next presenter. You're watching Red Cloud's live silver showcase, by the way, if you're just tuning in. The next company presentation is from Cutney Silver. This firm is advancing 4 projects in Mexico. Eric Sprott is an investor. Red Cloud covers this company. And if you were with us off the top of the show, you would have heard that Taylor Combaluzier, VP of Equity Research at Red Cloud Securities, named this as a top idea. So to do the honors here, we have the president and CEO, Jim McDonald. Jim, great to see you. Thanks for being part of this. And
yeah, hi, Mark.
Yours.
Yeah, great. Good to see you. Okay, so let's get going here with the presentation. I'll just put it into presentation mode. And there we go. Okay, so Cutney Silver is a exploration company. We're focused on the discovery of silver deposits in Mexico, Mexico being, of course, the biggest silver producer in the world. So that's really the place to be when you're looking for silver. We'll be making a number of forward-looking statements here, so be aware of that. And what Cutney Silver provides the investor is two things. We've always got an ongoing exploration programs looking for new opportunities at the grassroots level and beyond. And we've made several discoveries over the years. And so we have 3 different deposits with resource estimates on them that give us one of the largest junior-owned silver asset bases in Mexico. So this provides significant leverage to the silver price. We give a lot of leverage to the silver price, and people really, a lot of investors like that and invest in the company because of that. But in addition to it, we have the classic explosive growth potential from the drill bit in new discoveries. And all of this, we of course believes gives us a potential for value re-rating. All these, especially the junior companies and even the mining companies now, are nowhere near being fairly valued given the metal prices. So move ahead here to the next slide. Here's our capital structure, which changed today because we just announced the closing of our financing led by Red Cloud. So there's about another 9.3 million shares here on the issued. And we just announced the closing on a over $10 million financing today, which puts us in a great position here to move forward on our Colombo silver property, which is really our focus. This is the most recent of our discoveries. No resource estimate here yet, but we have drilled over 30,000 meters and 145 holes, and we're currently drilling. And now with this new financing, we're going to be able to expand on that program and really advance more rapidly to our near-term goal of getting to a maiden resource estimate on the Columba project. And so the resources that we currently have sit on 3 projects: Promontorio and La Negra are 3 deposits: Promontorio, La Negra, and La Ceguera, totaling 214 million ounces of silver equivalent M&I, and then another almost 55 million in the silver equivalent in the inferred category. And we've just recently updated the resource estimates on all these projects, so they're current. And then, as mentioned before, we've got this generative program ongoing all the time. In the earlier stage projects, we option them out and to other people to mitigate the risk. And the most advanced of those is the discovery of a gold oxide deposit in Mexico, and we sold our remaining interest to the partner there. We're located here in northern Mexico. There's Colombo, our highlight flagship property on the extension of the Sierra Madre Trend shown in red. And there's the La Ceguera resource in the famous Parral district of Mexico, and then the Promontorio project which includes the La Negra deposit in southern Sonora. So the focus is here the Colombo project, and it's a classic high-grade vein system. Really important aspects here: it's almost entirely preserved from erosion. Whatever was deposited here is still here. The old records from 2 periods of historic production showed some pretty high grades. We picked up an option 5 years ago almost to earn 100%. We made our last payment a year ago, just under a year ago, and now we own 100% of this project. And highlight holes like 34 meters, a half kilo, 17.8 meters at 650 grams per ton, 6 meters at 2,000 grams per ton in various veins. In fact, what we found is that the historically worked vein is not even the best one. And so this is what it looks like. These are the veins depicted in this image here in yellow, the major veins. The arrow you see with the inset picture, that's a historically worked vein. It was the only one that was really worked. In the past, about maybe 100,000 tons were extracted. It's guesstimated. And this, I hope you can notice, there's kind of a rim around this, these veins, and that's an old volcano. That's an old caldera, actually. And what's interesting here is at the bottom of that caldera, bottom of that volcanic cone, is your erosion low point, and it's just clip the top of these veins where they start to become productive and have good grade silver. When you go upward in elevation and climb the hills in any direction, you start to lose the vein. You can still follow your structure and you lose the silver, but the vein is still there at depth. So again, almost entirely preserved from any erosion. So whatever was put down here originally is still there. In the upper right is agricultural country. The highway up there in the upper right is 3-hour drive to the airport in the capital city of Chihuahua, Ciudad de Chihuahua. And then when we look at the size of this system, which is, by the way, from left to upper left to lower right, 4 kilometers by 3 kilometers in the other direction. When we look at the size of that, it's similar to well-known districts in Mexico and relatively recent discoveries. In the middle is Vizsla, over 300 million ounces now. And then on the far left, of course, is the Las Chispas mine now in production with some very high grades. So we have the scope of scale here for something that could be 100 million ounces or multiples of that even. And so when we zoom in on some of the highlights in the various veins, look, the shaded area are the portions of this project we do not own. Everything else we have. And right in the middle, you'll see a lot of red dots. That's a historically worked vein where we had intercepts like 7.5 meters of 650 grams per ton. The upper right, you'll see intercepts like 44 meters of 300 grams per ton, 6 meters of 2,000 grams per ton. And then our real focus right now is down on the bottom, what we call the D vein. You see that in the bottom, where the most consistent, wide, high-grade hits are on this vein. We closed out drilling last fall with a program where we defined 450, 500 meters of strike. And now we just embarked on a new program about 3-4 weeks ago, where we're stepping out aggressively at about 100 meters a time, looking to double that strike length. And you can see the real highlight hole of 34 meters, a half kilo. That's the deepest hole in that vein so far. It's open in all directions. Not much time here really to study these long sections. This is the historic vein, but the point here is you can see the shaft. They put 6 levels getting ready to mine here. But from the far left-hand side, we're seeing high-grade hits over 800 grams per ton, all the way to the far right-hand side where we're still in material over 400 grams. And if you look at the bottom red dots there, hole 123, deepest hole still in 700-gram material. And then on the far right, deepest hole in that area over 2 kilos. So then when we look at the D vein where we're really focused, we're looking at a roughly 500 meters of strike here. You can see multiple wide intercepts, wide open. And now we're going along the right-hand side, systematically stepping out and drilling in a pattern that roughly looks like this on this plan map. So for the sake of time, I'm going to have to skip ahead here. What we're embarking on now with Columba is we started a 5,000 meter program with the new financing. We're expanding that into 20,000 or an additional 20,000 meters, which we think will get us to a maiden resource. And we're shooting for that for the end of the year, results willing. And so I think closing out on my 10 minutes. So very quickly, the La Ceguera resource, we really like this project. It's in the Parral district. We're on the extension of an area of that district that's produced over 500 million ounces of silver. You can see in the bottom of the map there, that's the Santa Barbara district. They're still mining there at 2,000 meter depths. And this is a pit constrained resource. It's coming right to surface. Tons of upside here. And a recent resource update increased the grade from 85 grams to 102 grams. So when silver is breaking $30, it starts to look really interesting again. Same kind of story with our Promontorio and La Negra deposits there. And we've updated the resources, getting them prepared for when we're really in the swing of a true silver bull market. And I think I'll just close out now so we can stay on time, and you can contact us anytime with questions.
All right, great stuff, Jim. Jim McDonald, the president and CEO at Cutney Silver. He's going to stick around for the panel discussion toward the end of the show. You're watching Red Cloud's live silver showcase. Again, a panel discussion after 3 more presentations to come from 3 different companies, and we're going to keep it on. By the way, we encourage your questions. If you have any questions for us, we'll try to get to them. Just put them in the chat box, and we can see if we can incorporate those into the panel discussion towards the end. Now, we are talking to Raina Silver. This is a company with multiple projects on the go. The main focus is on the Gigi project in Mexico. The head of investor relations is Lauren McGaw, someone we've talked to before. Great to see you again, Lauren. We will let you take it away.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and looking forward to sharing the Raina Silver story and what we're up to currently. Raina Silver, for those of you who don't know, we're an exploration company, but our focus is on high-grade district scale. And when we say that, what we mean is we're looking for something that's high enough grade that eventually the project can make money when silver is at whatever your personal nightmare is. But simultaneously is large enough that it can take advantage of the cyclic nature of the resource market. And so when silver goes to whatever your dreams are made of, that's how you make significant money. On top of that, projects that have that extra leverage, and on top, that's our focus, that's our filter, and that's how we pick our projects. As you guys know, forward-looking statements, we're a junior company. Please do your research. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. So we have 4 projects that fit through that high-grade district scale filter. We have an exploration team that has been serially successful in their exploration of this style of deposit, including my father, Dr. Peter McGaw, who's the co-founder of Mag Silver. And on top of that, the geologists that we have boots on the ground, those were the team that was part of the major discoveries that Scroop's historically made. And in addition to our CEO, Jorge Ramiro Monroy, who brings his expertise in the capital markets, not just in Canada and New York, the US, but also in Southeast Asia and Australia. And that's allowed us to put together a strong, balanced investor register between retail, institutions, and management, and allowed us to have access to capital so that we can have exploration success. We have 4 projects. We believe in the portfolio method, so the idea that a stool is significantly more stable with 4 legs than 1 or even 2. We've got 2 projects in Mexico, Badapilas and Gigi, and 2 projects in Nevada, Medicine Springs and Griffin. Badapilas is historically Mexico's highest grade silver district. It's actually a native silver district. Our other 3 projects are what are called carbonate replacement deposits. I'll go into this in a little bit more here in a second, but what it boils down to is our Gigi project's at the heart of the Santa Eulalia mining district, one of the world's biggest and most significant CRDs. And what we know from studying CRDs and the Santa Eulalia district in particular, half of the system is missing. It hasn't been found yet. So we're looking for that other half of that 500 million ounce district. On top of that, we have the 2 projects in Nevada where we're taking this team's expertise in CRD exploration in Mexico, where they've been repeatedly successful in finding large systems. We're taking that up to Nevada because, well, Nevada's the silver state, and in part because of the CRD systems that have historically produced there. So we're looking at Medicine Springs, where we think we have the full system. And then this last year, we acquired this project called Griffin. And Griffin's particularly exciting because not only does it appear to be a CRD system, but it has been overprinted by a Carlin type gold system. And that's before we get into the critical metals of it all. So one of the decisions we made this year is to take Griffin and make that the focus for our drilling program this summer, because it might be the newest project to us, but it's by far the most advanced. And if we're right about any component that we see at Griffin, this could be a really significant deposit. Our technical team, in terms of capital structure, we have 188 million shares outstanding. We have a market cap of about 30 million Canadian, and cash on hand as of March was 4.6 million Canadian. We actually just launched a recent additional financing because of the appetite, and because Red Cloud said, hey, we have appetite for this. And this allows us to further our drilling program at Griffin this summer, particularly with some of the exciting targets that we've discovered recently, as well as strong institutional support. One of our focuses is grade. Grade is king. You plot it out, you use the math, it really comes down to grade. Secondarily, scale is Raina. Raina is Spanish for queen, so a fun little joke on why why we do what we do. So I'm going to focus this presentation on Griffin because that's what we're focusing on for this summer, particularly because the drilling season in Nevada is summertime. It's over 10,000 hectares. And it's really an example of when the market's been where it's at, the truly great projects become available. And we seize the opportunity to go after this. Where it resides is between the Carlin Trend and the Battle Mountain Eureka Trend. Absolutely huge gold mega districts, which is why historically the focus on this project has just been on gold, despite the fact that if you look at the secondary trends that we see, you have the Emigrant Range District, the Railroad District, Eureka, where I-80 has been focusing or refocusing on the CRD deposits that reside beneath the Carlin type deposits. We went, wow, we see this same assemblage at Griffin. Let's see if we can take advantage of that and explore this full system, not just the gold. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's shiny, it's lovely, but also looking at this extra potential there. And as you can see, the focus on gold, there's a good reason for it. Gold is absolutely everywhere on this project. We've got over 4,000 samples, almost 25% of them have come back with over 0.3% gold. We get zones that run up to 25 grams gold. The focus on gold is obvious, but one of the exciting things here is that we also have this carbonate replacement deposit component as well. And I'm going to take a moment real quick to explain what a CRD is, because, well, I think if you understand the deposit, you'll understand why we are so excited about the potential here. So CRDs are these continuous zoned, multi-phased, high grade, especially when they get big. And they're also polymetallic, but you get good recovery rates out of them because of their style of mineralization. And what happens is you have a porphyry, like a magma chamber, that intrudes, coming off of its acidic mineralized fluid that goes through fractures in the rock, essentially the plumbing or the routes of mineralization. And when it comes in contact with the carbonate, whether it be limestone or dolostone, you get an acid-base reaction and the mineralization drops out. And this happens again and again and again. And the more times it happens, the bigger these deposits get. Another way to think about these things is that they're a public transportation system. So that porphyry source, that's like your bus terminal. And you have all these bus routes coming out. Those are your fractures, your structures. And different elements hop on the bus and it goes fully loaded out, and different elements get out in different neighborhoods. So when you're in what we call the skarn, that's like your downtown area, you'll have higher copper, gold, lead, zinc. Silver will be a little bit lower grade than it is outboard, but that's where everything's voluminous. As you make your way further out, you get into the suburbs. Those are what we call the Chimney Monto portion of the system. There, your silver grade goes way up along with your lead and your zinc, as well as some critical metals. And then finally, at the very end of the system, the elements that fell asleep on the back of the bus get kicked out. Those are our trace elements or alteration halo. And one of our focuses is on looking at the full system. So typically you divide, we think about these things based off of what outcrop. So it's a CRD or it's a skarn or it's porphyry. We're looking at the full thing and not just the linear component, but also the fact that these things branch out like almost like a treetop. So when we're looking at Griffin and you see these deep-seated structures that go through an area where we know there's big CRDs and porphyries, we know that we're at the top of a carbonate section in part because of historic drilling. We see the high-grade mineralization that we're looking for that tells us it's a long-lived system. The rest of these tell us that the bus left the terminal many times fully loaded, and we see a lot of those indicators at Griffin. And you're in Eureka and the Battle Mountain, or in the Elko County, great jurisdictions. We're seeing this gold and the CRD style mineralizations of silver, lead, zinc, copper using these same structures. We just did a relog of all the 23 historic core holes 2 weeks ago. It is really exciting to see the potential and taking advantage of the fact that everyone's been so focused on the gold. And yet we have these really crazy CRD targets available to us. And not only that, we're 5 miles from the road. When I was out at site last week and you look out across the valley and you see the Cortez camp, which produced 40 million ounces of gold, we're in the right neighborhood for big discoveries. And, we see structures that have gold and silver and copper, long-lived structures. That's your plumbing. Let's look at that plumbing, really chase it, because the gold uses the same plumbing that the CRD systems use. It's like a bunch of little cars. So the question is, how do you find those main highways? How do you find the traffic jams? And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at this summer. Silver is going to be a focus for us. But one of the other things we're going to look at is the sources of these systems are commonly indicated by copper mineralization. We have this area called Sadler where we get samples up to 11.6%. Nearby, we have gold veins that run up to 25 grams per ton gold and silver up to 2,000 grams per ton silver. So we've got some really exciting targets coming together. And that wasn't enough. We also have our other projects that we're working on, making sure that our quiver is full of where we're going next. So if you guys have any questions, particularly about the other projects or what we're up to with Griffin, please feel free to reach out. And thank you so much to Red Cloud for having us.
And thanks to you, Lauren. We appreciate that. They're very thorough. We'll talk to you during the panel discussion in just a moment. That is Lauren McGaw, Head of Investor Relations at Raina Silver. As mentioned, a panel discussion coming up after a few more company presentations. Feel free to enter some questions in the chat box. We will try to get to them. Our next speaker comes from Silver North Resources. This is a company with assets in Yukon, including the Haldane project. The president and CEO is Jason Weber. We're going to bring him in now, and he will handle the presentation. Great to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Jason, take it away.
Oh, thanks very much. I'll just get my presentation up here. Yeah, it's great group of presentations this morning. It's been quite a treat to listen to these, and I'm really happy to bring Silver North to the attention of the audience here. I think we're really onto some good projects in the Yukon Territory of Canada. That's where we're focused. I am a geologist, so by nature I'm very positive outlook. So here's our forward-looking statements representing that. As I said, we're operating in the Yukon Territory. We have 2 projects. One is Haldane, which is in the historic Keno District, central part of the Yukon. We own 100% of the Haldane project, and we're at the western side of the Keno District. We made a new discovery there, announced in January of 2021, 311 grams silver over a nice wide 8.7 meter intersection. We followed that up with further intersections of high-grade silver. That's our main, our flagship project, but we also have another project called Tim. As Lauren was just talking about CRD deposits, Tim is a CRD. It's located right at the BC Yukon border. We're partnered with Coeur on this project. They're earning into this project, and we'll be funding drilling at Tim this summer, again looking for high-grade silver mineralization. I'll talk first about Haldane. That's our, as I said, our flagship. What's really kind of unique about this is we're in a 100-year-old silver district, and we're still able to make today brand new silver vein discoveries. This is project's road accessible. You're in a mining camp. Access is excellent. Infrastructure is fantastic. We've made recent discoveries, and we feel there's potential to make new vein discoveries, and this is evidenced by a blind discovery we made in the last few years called Bighorn, an area that was not previously identified until we did some soil geochem and came up with an anomaly and drill tested it. And probably what's most exciting for us about this district is that if you take all the veins that we've identified on surface to date, and you add the lengths of the strike of those veins together, you get about 12 kilometers. There's only been 28 drill holes on this project from surface, and that tests only about 600 meters of that 12 kilometers. So this is why we feel so confident that there's lots of room to not only make new discoveries, but build on what we've found already. As I mentioned, this Keno is a significant district after the Yukon Gold Rush in the early 1900s. A lot of the sourdoughs headed east, looking for gold, following some of the major river systems, ended up in the Keno area and found silver. And that sparked a silver rush that sort of accumulated in over 220 million ounces of silver production up until 1989. A very high grade, over 1,000 grams per ton silver. Infrastructure is excellent. You can see on this slide we have an electrical substation within 5 kilometers of the project. Power line runs within a couple kilometers, and the highway is also a couple kilometers away, with road access right into our area of drilling. There has been some small-scale historical mining, but I think just due to the distance, back in the early 1900s, you're looking at probably 20 kilometers to move any ore from the Haldane area over to Elsa, where processing took place. By horse and buggy, that would have been a tall order. So I think that's part of the reason why this project sat idle for so long and is available for us to make new discoveries. Just a bit of a lay of the land. You can see kind of like what Lauren was just talking about, being in gold districts and having these dynamic ore producing environments. We feel the Keno district is very similar. For the longest time, it was known just as the Silver District, but more recently, you've got the Eagle deposit just to the north of us that Victoria Gold put into production a few years ago. And then in the light blue, just to the east of us on this claim map, we have Banyan Gold, who's outlined about 7 million ounces in resources over the last few years. So, this is a silver district with a burgeoning gold camp in it. And as geologists, that's what we like to see: dynamic systems that are productive in many different commodities. This is a geology map of the district. You can see the light blue gray unit that kind of runs down the center of the valley that makes up the most of this district. That's the Keno Hill basal quartzite member. That is the key unit that hosts, by and large, the majority of all Keno style vein systems. And you can see the number of deposits that have been identified and discovered, and you can see most of them lie within that blue-gray unit. So us having a great expanse of that at the Haldane property is really important, as it is the key unit for hosting these deposits. When we zoom into Haldane itself, we see a series of somewhat parallel or subparallel vein faults that host mineralization. The most significant for us recently is the West Fault, where we made our discovery in 2021. And that's kind of in the center of this area we call the Mount Haldane vein system. You can see off to the northwest, there's another target called Bighorn. That's the new, brand new target that we identified through soil geochem and follow-up drilling. This is looking off to the northwest from the top of Mount Haldane, looking down the Bighorn Valley. This is where most of our work takes place. You can see the West Fault drill pad up on the right side of the hillside. That's where we have some nice high grade 3.14 meters of 1,315 grams per ton silver. Down in the valley bottom, you see Middlecoff and the Johnson veins. These are a couple of the areas that had historic production back in the early 1900s. And then right on the road that comes up the valley, our access road, you can see the area where Bighorn was discovered in 2019. And off in the distance, you can see the road off to the Eagle Gold Mine. This is just a plan map of the drilling, only to show that there hasn't been a lot of drilling on this, and we've already identified over 100 meters by 90 meters of strike and dip direction on this vein system. We've done that through 50-meter step outs at the West Fault. And what's really, I think, encouraging here, and you can see it on the cross section on the right-hand side, is we have the West Fault structure, and then just a few hundred meters further to the east, we have the main fault, which we also think has great potential to host silver mineralization. So lots of room to move on this down dip and to the southwest, and that's what we intend to do. This just is a photograph looking along the strike of the veins, and you can see the main fault off to the right, and some of the proposed holes in yellow that would test both the West Fault, and then we also would like to do a test through West Fault and into the main. The main's interesting. It actually has mineralization on surface. The West Fault didn't. So to find this high-grade mineralization at depth was really exciting for us, and I think it really bodes well for the main fault and its potential to host mineralization. Bighorn, this is the other one, 3 kilometers away. This was some really high-grade soil geochem on surface that we tested with drilling. While the intersection that we made here, 125 grams per ton silver over almost 2.5 meters, isn't ore grade. It's really what it is indicative that you are in a productive vein system. And now the process is to start exploring along that vein, along strike, down dip, to find where high-grade mineralization may reside. And that's exactly what we intend to do in our next phase of work there. I'll just touch quickly on our Tim property. This is option to Coeur. They can earn up to 80% through some cash payments, exploration expenditures, and completing a feasibility study by the 8th anniversary of the agreement. This, as I said, is a CRD type deposit right along the BC Yukon border. It's about 19 kilometers to the northeast of the Silvertip mine property that Coeur has been exploring quite successfully on over the last few years, which is one of the reasons we're really happy to have Coeur as the operator here. They've identified their CRD system and its unique characteristics that they are now taking that knowledge, bringing it over to our project here at Tim to test some surface results, like 4 meters of almost 470 grams per ton silver. Going to do that with about a 2,000 meter drill program that'll start in June of this year to just test this depth, this mineralization at depth, and get a good characterization of where we might be in the CRD system here and where to go next. So that's a fully funded program by Coeur, and we're looking forward to that starting up early in the season, and then we'll follow that up with our own exploration at Haldane later in the year. So I feel that, for a company like Silver North, the greatest value we can add is through the drill bit discovery. You can add ounces to your portfolio. That's going to bring value for your shareholders, and that's exactly what we intend to do. Just a quick share capital structure slide here. Nice tight structure, just over 43 million shares outstanding. Market cap just under 7 million today. We've been trading sort of the 15 to 17 cents range. We launched a small financing a few weeks ago and traded. That was at 10 cents. We traded up to 17 cents through the financing and stayed there. So really encouraging market. I think the sentiment's changing, and for discovery stage companies like us, I think it bodes very well going forward. And just touch on our management team. There's led by myself, our VP Exploration, Rob Duncan, and our Executive Chairman, Mark Brown. We look after the technical and the financing aspects of the company together, and we're backed by a solid team of both technical and financial resources that help us move this company forward towards discovery. I think I'll leave it with that, and and we can move on to the next presentation. Just like to say thanks for having us present at this. We really appreciate being part of the Red Cloud program here.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jason. Jason Weber, President and CEO at Silver North Resources. He'll stick around for the panel discussion, which will come after this presentation from Silver Viper Minerals, which is advancing the La Virginia Gold Silver project in Sonora, Mexico. Red Cloud covers this company, and the president and CEO is a gentleman we've spoken to at least once before, personally, one-on-one, but he's part of the Red Cloud landscape for a while now. It is Steve Cope. We'll bring him in here, and he's going to deliver the presentation. How are you, Steve? Take it away.
I'm doing well, Mark. Thank you. Yeah, I'll dive right in and try and make up some time here and get into that panel, which I think a lot of people find very exciting. So we have like you said, this is Silver Viper Minerals. We have the La Virginia project. Right now, we're a single project company. We believe, you should have, a secondary asset, but we don't believe in just putting anything in. We want to make sure that it's something that would drive value for our shareholders and add. So we are in the market for another asset, but the La Virginia asset by itself is obviously a very special project and something that, we found a lot of gold and silver at already. So again, here, forward-looking statements like everyone else, you can draw your attention to those slides, because we will be making those during the presentation. The Silver Viper Minerals sits within the Belcara Management Group. We just recently added Taj Singh as the chairman, who replaced Gary Cope, my father, who's retiring from the industry after, being pardoned, was the founder of the Belcara Group. But Taj Singh has come and joined our First Nordic mining team, and then as well joining as chairman of Silver Viper Minerals. It's a team very well experienced. We've got multiple, senior geologists within the group and what kind of separates our group from others is all eyes from everyone within the group are on all the projects, all the companies, and helping out, where a lot of other groups, kind of keep the different companies separate. We really value everyone's expertise and come together and all work together across all the different companies within the group. It's a group with a long track record of success around Mexico and other parts of the world. Previously, for the core of the group was the Oracle Silver deposit or company, and selling, that in a bidding war between Coeur and First Majestic. And really shows our group's model. Our group's model is to take something somewhere along the exploration timeline, take it as far as the feasibility study, and then look to vend it off to one of the major mining companies. We only get involved with projects that we believe would be of interest to those major mining companies. And for that, we need to see certain minimum thresholds of potential, over 1 million ounces of gold equivalent or over 100 million ounces of silver equivalent. If we don't see that, we'll step back from the project, look to vend it off to someone on a smaller scale. But we really only get involved with the big, tier 1 type asset potentials that are out there. So that's what we're focused on, and that's certainly what we think we have here with the La Virginia project. Quickly, you can see our shares outstanding. We are in the middle of a raise through Red Cloud at the moment. We just recently closed our first tranche for just over $2.1 million. We're going to raise up to $4 million. That's being done at 10 cents with a half warrant at 15. So if you're interested, please reach out to Red Cloud or the company directly. We have a great group of institutional shareholders behind the company. I think we've had 8 already participate on the first tranche of that placement. So it's nice to see the funds finally, after the last 2 years, getting some inflows recently and starting to participate. Of course, you've seen dozens and dozens of companies go to market over the last 2 to 3 weeks. So those funds are being forced to spread those funds rather thinly, but it's still nice to see them finally have some capital to deploy back into the space. One of the staples, and you'll see there too, is we're always proud of his management, is a very large holder of all the Belcara companies and participates in the open market, participates on placements. We believe the best place to invest our own money is into the companies that we're running. La Virginia, just quickly overview, was the #1 exploration assets by a company called Mine Finders that was ultimately sold to Pan American Silver for $1.5 billion. This was their #1 exploration asset, and their main asset was a mine 100K to the south called Dolores. They flew the whole mountain range with helicopters looking for another Dolores mine and settled on La Virginia being the lookalike on surface. When they were doing their exploration, they were focused on one very small portion of a very large claim package and really ignored the rest of the claims. They didn't map, sample, they didn't do any of that other work because they had some success down in the Las Huatas, Virginia area of the project. But when we got involved and were brought in, we did our site visit and we could see these structures run north-south for, hundreds of kilometers. And you see them outcrop as these large silicified dikes. And you go back and look at the database and they hadn't mapped, sampled, done anything all across and up. So we knew, where our expertise was in discovery. and we knew we could get involved here and make, additional discoveries, which is what we did right off the bat, end of our first phase of drilling on the project at El Ruby. And what we found at El Ruby was, bigger widths, higher grades, even than the successful stuff they were hitting further, so about 4 to 5K south where they were focused. And that's become our main event. And that, really is kind of the lookalike for what the Dolores mine became. The stuff to the south is slightly different, it's still effective and it's nice, but at El Ruby, we're closer to the heat source. We're seeing, like you say, higher grades, higher widths, and we also are showing the potential for an open pit heap leach operation. Silver is great, but we've always been a fan of being able to diversify and having more than one metal. So on this project so far, our resource is about 60% gold, 40% silver, which is still a very high percentage of silver exposure. When you look around at kind of our peer group of companies, there's not a lot of companies that have quality silver exposure. But I also like having the exposure to gold. One, it gives us access to both the gold and the silver majors, but it also gives us access to the prices as they increase, and especially on the silver side, because as we've talked about earlier in this, most of the primary silver producers aren't economic. Going back 10 years, they needed $25 silver to break even, and why most of the big silver producers have effectively become gold producers. Pan American Silver is now 80% of their production is in gold, and it's because silver hasn't been economic. So to have the ability to survive those tougher times by having exposure to gold and then getting the upside of silver when silver really runs, I think really makes our project stand out from a lot of others in the area. We're located over on the eastern side of the state of Sonora. This is the #1 gold producing state in Sonora. Most of the large mining companies, if they operate in Mexico, have an open pit heap leach operation in the state. We take a paved highway from the international airport in Hermosillo, and then from there we're about 30 minutes in on a gravel dirt road right to the heart of our camp and the project. The nice thing here is, even though this particular part of the Sierra Madre Mountains is very remote, most of it is inaccessible. We've got, as far as modern operations, we've got Dolores 100K to the south, LT grade 90K to the north. In the same trend was a past producing mine, and now as a junior that's been doing a lot of really good work and exploring and trying to bring that back to prominence. But in between, other than La Virginia, there's been no modern exploration. When you look at the Curiosity Mines and you listen to Lauren, you're talking about these districts that have, all of this production. You saw, Las Chispas on the Kootenay presentation. These mines should be very tightly and close together. But the reason that you haven't found that here yet in this particular trend is because of access. We have access across the river that sits just to our west. But all the way up and even further north from LT grade, there's not another bridge across that river. So even to access their project, you've got to go all the way up around the border and loop back around, and it's very difficult access for a lot of this area. But we've got a brand new power line corridor right through our project. You can get right to our project because there's a bridge right at that local town in Corichico over the river. And you've got water year round. You've got a lot of things going for it in this particular area. So it puts us in a very good position. But I actually like stepping away from those big districts because I find those districts have been picked over pretty good. You can get lucky and you can still stumble onto something, but the easy fruit has been taken in those districts. It's going and finding a new district in its own little part of Mexico that I think is where you can have those really, really big wins. And again, I think we're on to one of those here at La Virginia. Here you can see the claims. We'll be making our final property payment on the claims in blue. We own all the claims in red, 100%. We have a final $200,000 payment, and some shares will be issued in June with our partners in Mexico. And then we'll own the project completely out 100%. So we're really excited to be done and have that over with. Again, just focusing quick here because time flies as you're talking. We only have 10 minutes, but the big kind of idea moving forward for La Virginia, this is El Ruby area where we made our discovery. You can see one of those big solidified dikes there. The rock's going to stick me up out of the ground on the top of that plateau. And this is where we've had a lot of our success. And we have the dike is a vertical system. It has a lot of our high grade gold and silver. It's a breccia structure. And then in the footwall, we get about an 80 to 20 meter wide zone of lower grade, but still a high grade mineralization for the low grade. And it's running kind of a gram to gram and a half gold equivalent numbers. And then we discovered the western zone 100 meters to the west, which is another 100+ meter wide zone of kind of that gram to gram and a half. And that's really where, we've took our maiden resource and focused on this starting as an open pit heap leach operation. And when you're comparing apples to apples in this, in the state, I think grade is king, absolutely, but grade is king depending on the style of mining. So the average open pit heap leach operation in the state of Sonora operates at about a 0.5 gram gold average grade. Our grade is sitting around 1 gram, and then we have another 0.5 gram of silver equivalent on top of that. So again, we're sitting here with a starting asset on the heap leach side that's very attractive, sitting at triple the grade of the most of the operating mines in the state. And then you have this high grade breccia structure that's vertical that you can follow, and then take that high grade material and go with a different process for it, as a secondary circuit at a mill. And then as we expand this deposit further down, one of the big wins of the exploration and the drill program that's going to be coming is testing this at depth. We have this andesite host rock that's very favorable. But then as you get into this rhyolite package, it's a much tighter or denser rock. It still has our veins going through, and the breccia structure goes through it, but you don't get as good of widths on the mineralization. And we had Crescat Capital and Quentin Henning, who's well known in the industry, did a deep dive through our database, and he said you're onto a gold carbonate base metal system. And then when you look at our results, you say, well, we haven't have any base metals, you don't have any carbonates. What are you talking about? And what that's going to come is that contact below the rhyolites, when those fluids came up to mineralize and they hit that tight contact of the rhyolites, you get these big blowouts. And he looked at our Pathfinder rocks elements and said, you're onto one of these. And so we did some geophysics. We've lit up a very large, deep target that we're very excited to get to. And so that'll be part of our exploration plan this year, as well as testing some of the new targets. Quickly, you can see some of the grades here. We've had some spectacular half meters, over 10,000 grams silver with over 700 grams gold in amongst a 20-meter high-grade section. It's, we give, and it holds together section by section very well in the El Ruby area. Again, this is one of those, talking about why we think we're onto something a bit different here. And when you're looking at Mexico, we've got high-grade gold and silver at surface. Here, you go down 300 meters down the drill hole, and you're still hitting high-grade gold and silver, but you have no base metals. And that isn't your traditional Mexican epithermal system. It means you're onto something else. And deep down, where we do see the odd base metals is we get some sulfides that have been blasted up from deep in the system. And you'll see that high-grade gold and silver with some chunky sulfide material in the area, but then you'll get a half meter of, base metals with copper, lead, zinc, running at high percentages, but a half meter on either side, you have high grade gold and silver with barely anomalous, base metals where you don't have those sulfides. So again, and as I mentioned that, one of the things that's important on any mining project you look at is metallurgy. So when I talk about open pit heap leach mining, all of our gold recoveries are over 90%. Low grade silver leaching at 76% is awesome, because we've got a half gram silver, equivalent for that open pit heap leach mining. So again, that's important. But then that high grade gold and silver from the breccia structure, I would see reporting to a secondary circuit and getting much higher recoveries on it. Again, quickly, we're already running out of time here, but you can see those grades that I was talking about in a resource. You can see the area where Pan American was focused, but it was our discovery at El Ruby that really allowed us to incorporate some starter pits in that, historic area where the topography isn't as favorable for open pit mining. At El Ruby, we know it comes off the southern side of this plateau, but that's a 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer plateau where we see mineralization extending all the way and off to the north. There's other targets further north. El Molino, you can see on this image here, is our #1 exploration target that we think we're going to make a brand new discovery on. Our surface sampling and mapping there shows these breccia structures tightly coming together with some very good surface sampling numbers. So that's going to be part of our next phase of drilling. We'll be making a new discovery, I expect, on El Molino, and then continuing to expand the El Ruby resource, both along strike and at depth. Again, you can see a lot of the blocks that are outside of that resource. With metals prices, that'll allow us to bring a lot of those in moving forward onto a new resource as well. That resource was done at, I believe, 1,500 gold. So again, obviously we've had a dramatic increase in that. That'll help bring a lot more ounces into the resource. And we've expanded that open pit by 300 meters to the south as well. So quickly, as part of the proceeds from the placement we're going to do a 5,000 meter program. It's going to be focused on El Ruby and El Molino. And then we'll start to expand out. We've had a lot of success in that El Oriental area with mapping and sampling. Again, all these areas are previously not drilled. Perdones, El Ruby North. This is just a small portion of the project again here. So we're really excited to get back out there drilling and make some new discoveries. Just quickly, you can see that deep target that we said the geophysics lit up under El Ruby, that again, we could be, the start of one of these big systems. The Kellyan mine in Indonesia is probably the most striking resemblance to what we see here, but also the Dolores mine to the south. With that, again, there's a lot of stuff going on, but we can probably get to a lot of it in the questions. And then, obviously we're big in the community and very important working with all of our partners in the local communities, making sure that we do things right. And with that, we can wrap it up and move on.
All right. Nice job, Steve. Steve Cope, President and CEO at Silver Viper Minerals. We're going to get to our panel discussion right now. For our viewers, if you have any questions, you can enter them in the chat box. We will try to get to them. Now, first question I will direct to all of you. We'll kick it off with Jason for our and then the rest of you can join in here. Now, the price of silver from mid-February to mid-April had quite an impressive run. It seemed steeper and a little bit more explosive than some of the rallies in recent years. And it has some people speculating that, and by the way, let me just interrupt my question here. I just want to say we've got Lauren McGaw, Raina Silver, Jim McDonald, Cutney Silver, Jason Weber, Silver North Resources, and Steve Cope, Silver Viper Minerals. So many people are speculating that maybe we're on the verge of what we saw in, say, 79, 80, when the Hunt brothers tried to corner the market and silver shot higher dramatically, and the big run we saw in 2011. So again, we'll start with you, Jason. Do you agree with that speculation? And second part of that question is, what do you think have been the main drivers of silver in the last several months?
Well, I mean, I do believe that. I mean, as a geologist working in the silver space, I think we all have to believe it to some extent. But this actually does really feel different this time. I think it feels like there is a momentum shift, and that we see that the silver price started to run there just as PDAC came on, and you could actually feel it at those conferences. So what's driving it? I think a lot of the political unrest right now, what's happening in the Mideast, Ukraine, Russia situation, I think that's kind of been underpinning this drive to some extent. But then I think what's going to happen is you're going to see that industrial demand as people start to recognize that. I'm not sure that's fully understood. And I think that's going to help keep the silver price up. I don't think we're just going to get a pop here and it comes back down to the low 20s or the high teens. So I think that's what's going on.
Who wants to jump in here?
I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah, so absolutely believe that we're on to the beginning of a silver bull market. Be more akin to the 2011 period. Some people I respect a lot who track and model the silver and gold, they think we're into a very long-term bull market, in fact, and we hope that that's the case. I've been in the junior side of this business for a long time, since about 1988, and I've seen a number of cycles. And the one thing that you always see is that silver gold ratio, and it will come back to the mean, which is currently around 60, 65, and it overshoots it. And I think in 2011, it got as low as maybe 35, if I recall correctly. So when it gets going, it's very explosive. And you saw some of that action in February here. It moves suddenly and strongly, and it really needs to break that $30 mark psychologically to really get going. And on the industrial demand side, you go to the Silver Institute. They just put out their report, and some really great data there. 11% growth in industrial and 64% growth on photovoltaic. So big, strong demand there. And so it's been our belief for a long time we're going to see a silver bull market coming. It looks like we're beginning in it. That's our belief. And my personal belief that it's going to go right through that previous high of over $50 on this particular one.
Lauren, what about you?
I think that in a lot of ways we can't fully know which way things are going to go. It could go up, down, sideways. We can all sit here and speculate, and I really hope that everyone is right, that it's going to go to some crazy number. But that's why Raina Silver focuses on gray, because this is a cyclic market. You get these rises, you get these falls, and in a lot of ways we model ourselves after what Max Silver's done, and that's a deposit, Juanicipio, that's under $8.50 for all-in sustaining costs for producing silver, and it's a great example for why you should focus on gray. It buffers you from, if people don't understand the value on silver and why it's important and why the price should be significantly higher than it is. And maybe that's the millennial in me speaking, that, you know, the idea that everyone's going to pick up on that. I hope it's right. And, you know, simultaneously making sure that we're focusing on projects that buffer us from the cycles.
Steve, lastly with this question, and we'll move on to a different topic, but we have seen a lot of false dawns in silver over the years. Many silver investors, speculators, they always think silver is going to the moon, it's going to triple digits. What do you think? Is this the real deal right now?
I mean, I think I'll partially disagree. I don't think we're in the 2011, 2012 phase of the cycle yet. I think we're more towards the beginning of breaking out of a bad cycle. And when you look at gold and silver on a macro scale, these cycles tend to be, you know, 8, 10, 12 years. When you go back, obviously it's 2020 when you can look back and see where you were, you know, when you've gone through a cycle completely. But where we're at right now, I mean, you've had gold punch through, it's already beaten its all-time high from that previous cycle, and you've got silver still sitting at, you know, essentially half of what it was at the high of the previous cycle. And what's different about this cycle, and we've touched on it a bit, is the industrial demand side. You know, gold in those previous cycles was tied to, gold and silver were tied together as the, you know, the replacement for currency, and it was, you know, almost 100% valued on that monetary side. Now all of a sudden you have silver, you know, over 50, you know, depending what you read, but over 50% of it is being valued on the industrial side and growing year over year. So I think that's what's really going to provide that explosive growth as we move forward for silver, as we talk about, as that ratio comes down and we get closer to that 50-to-1. I think there's a ton of value obviously to be made right now as you move up just on the ratio, but then you factor in this large industrial side for the first time in its history that's been, you know, driving a lot of the value. And what's going on top of all of that, you start to look at the physical supply of the metal above ground, and it's all moving east, where it's not going to be returned back to the west. And I think, and maybe the question's coming up later because I've seen a list of questions, but what's really driving the price right now for me is that the acquisitions of that physical metal moving east and starting these, you know, big producers of, you know, like solar panels and that to produce these in Asia and front running and, you know, either going long on the metal and taking delivery of the physical metal. But, you know, we saw a TD article not long ago saying, you know, in 2019, the expectation was that we had 165 years of silver above ground, and now it's 1 to 2 years of supply that those guys have access to. And that's what's night and day different about any of these past cycles, and what's really going to send silver that much higher during this cycle, whether that's over 1 to 2 years or that's over 8 to 10 years, like we all hope it is. And this is a long run of, this is just the start of where metals prices are. I think investors are either way are in a really good shape looking at gold and silver companies right now.
Jason, let's circle back to you and continue with that industrial theme. That this is a new element, that the shift to the green energy and silver's place in that. And I believe it was Jim who mentioned the demand coming out of the growth coming out of the solar industry. So how meaningful is this fairly new pillar to industrial use for silver?
Well, I think when you look at last year's data, I think photovoltaic demand was 20% of all silver demand. So that 10 years ago, we didn't even consider that. So and that's only set to grow. I think that the forecasts for it, you look at some of the new solar panel technology, it's using 50 to 150% more silver per panel. And sort of contrary to how these things usually go, it's usually you get more efficient with your metals and how you use them, and you use less. The new technologies, that half of all solar panels produced this year will use the new technology that uses 50 to 150% more silver per panel. So I think yes, photovoltaic demand is a big part of the picture, and it is only growing, and that's largely due to that. Not just the amount of panels produced, but the type of technology being used, and it uses more silver.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that topic?
Well, I kind of like what Lauren said. It might go up, it might go down, it might stay the same. But Kavanaugh, an old friend of mine who was one of the discoverers of the South Pipeline deposit at Cortez Trend, was commissioned by somebody to do a projection on the gold price. and he did a lot of research into it, and that was his conclusion at the end. But I stated what our belief is and where silver is going. Many years ago, I toured a gentleman from London who's a fund manager, had his own fund, heavily investing in silver, and they called him Hi-Ho Silver in London. He was so adamant about it. This was when silver was $4.80 an ounce. And I asked him during the tour of the mine we were at, why silver? Because and everything he said was the same reason you'd buy gold. So I asked him, well, why not buy gold? And he said it's because of the industrial demand component on it. And when the monetary demand starts to take over, you have this inelasticity in the supply and this extra leverage on the upside. So, there's no question about the industrial demand is quite big. Interesting about photovoltaics really taken over from what photography used to be, and then some. And so you've always got this strong industrial demand, and that's why you've got this added leverage somewhere during the cycle, historically speaking.
Let's shift gears here, and we'll kick off this segment with Lauren. So silver is not considered a critical mineral. It's not on the critical minerals lists in the U.S. and Canada. But as you probably know, there's a push by a number of producers to have it included. Should it be included? And the contrarian side of that would be, well, let's not bother, because that could be burdensome from a regulatory standpoint with government oversight and so on. So where do you stand on that, Lauren?
Well, I think the way that I look at it is, silver is a brilliant metal. It's got multiple uses, and it's a great electrical conductor. I think, we're going to see a shift on that. It'll be interesting to see whether or not it makes the critical metal list. But I think one of the other things to consider about silver, and particularly silver deposits, because we're all looking for silver deposits, is silver's a gregarious metal. It likes to hang out with lead and zinc and copper. You look at CRD deposits, they're, by their very nature, they scavenge the other elements around them, which is the reason why you see CRDs that also have a cobalt credit or a nickel credit or an indium or a vanadium, or these critical metals that are already on the list. And so, if you're looking at a big deposit, something that's going to be of significance, you're probably dealing with something that's multi-phase. And it means you're going to end up having those critical metals components. And, so even if silver doesn't end up on the critical metals list, these deposits will have the things that allow them to, fast track their road to production. And, I think it's another indicator of, focus on the deposits that make a difference, move the needle, and then you get exposure to both sides without potentially having that, regulatory shift.
Silver is a gregarious metal. I like that. Steve, do you have a thought on whether it should be included on the critical minerals list?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason most of the industry has wanted it on there is we've gone through 2 years of absolute, having a very tough time raising capital. And we've seen, some of these companies that have access to metals that are on that critical list, are seeing government investments and driving their project. It's a way that a lot of us had hoped we could get financed. Whether we end up on the critical list or not, I think it's more important that those governments do need to start looking at financing silver companies, because they have to acknowledge, whether it meets all the little caveats of what should be on the critical list, that they need, for their factories and for what's going to be being produced in their country, they need to start to secure that supply of silver, and not allow, the companies, like I know of one mining company right now that's selling at $3 over spot, and they don't want to be named, but selling directly to China and to, one of these companies that produces solar panels that wants their entire supply of silver. And so what's happening right now, while we're not treating it as a critical, and governments are kind of ignoring it and not, making sure that they're securing their supply, is they're allowing that physical metal to move east. And that becomes, whether it's critical or not, does become at some point something very important to the manufacturing and to protecting assets and commodities within Canada, the US, Mexico, wherever it is.
I want to pick up on that point about funding, and let's direct this to Jason. And again, anybody can jump in here. But are you currently seeing a positive shift in sentiment in terms of availability for funding and/or investment?
Yeah, and I think a lot of silver companies are over the last 6 weeks or so, 8 weeks. It's been, I think the shift has been somewhat fundamental, especially, at our stage. We're at the earliest stage of the exploration mining cycle, pre-discovery, discovery stage. That's typically been, through a downturn, the toughest area or the toughest stage to raise capital for. And I've lived it. So I can say it absolutely has been. We announced a financing, I guess it was mid-March, and we had incoming calls. It wasn't just us on the phone phoning people up to see if they'd take part in the financing. We were getting many incoming calls to take part in it, which is a change that didn't happen a year ago. And in the end, we probably could have closed on double what we had announced, and our share price was 70% higher, at the end, at the closing, than it was at the start. So that is something we haven't seen in a while as well. So yes, the availability of capital is easier right now. I think it is easier for the bigger companies. It's filtering down to the earlier stage companies like ours. So you won't see necessarily large volumes of capital available yet at our level, but I think it is coming. I just wanted to touch on the critical metals idea here. I think the other aspect to that, being on that critical metals list, may come at the later stage in these projects as they're getting developed and into the permitting phase. I think being on that critical metals list may be an advantage as you go into the permitting phase. So I think that is a reason that silver should be added to that list. It is absolutely critical to almost anything electronic we produce to date. And if we become reliant on China for supply, or they start taking all the supply, that's going to be a critical bottleneck for the Western countries to produce pretty much anything. So I think that is another angle why silver should be involved in that.
Anyone else with a comment or opinion about the availability of funding?
Well,
I know Jim and I both went to the market too. So there's, I do think we saw a little window there. I think it kind of has dried up a little bit here the last, I kind of triggered on that day where gold fell off from its peak down over $100 an ounce. And all of a sudden investors got a little nervous again, as they do, because they've been through such a long, tough road with gold and silver. But, and there were dozens and dozens of companies that went to the market over the last kind of month. But I think you've kind of seen over the last week or so, it eased off. You're seeing share prices kind of pull back again a bit from where they were, 2 weeks ago. So it's going to come in waves. But again, I think it just speaks back to where we were, that we're at the start of something. It was great to see those mining focused funds have some inflows and finally have some capital to deploy. Seeing, the retail guys who've kind of been there over the last 2 years because they've seen the market kick so much and placing their bets as well. But it was the first time we've seen funds want to participate in a financing in over 2 years. So I agree, there is a start going there, and there's the generalist funds, and people are starting to pick up the chat in the main media and wanting to get involved. But it's going to go through ebbs and flows, as we always kind of see in the silver space, and you've got to have your timing right and be ready to go to the market when the capital is there.
Did you want to jump in there, Lauren?
Yeah, we got really lucky that, in large part because of the projects that we're working on in, particular Griffin, where, last Thursday, yeah, Red Cloud called up and said, hey, we have appetite for your project. And we said that allows us to drill, 1,000 more meters plus. Let's take advantage of that. So yeah, the market's tapering off maybe a little bit, but it's really exciting to see people excited, and particularly excited about the kind of projects that could really move the dial.
Okay, a couple of more questions for each of you, and then we'll wrap this up. Would you say, and I guess how about we go to Jim here? Would you say that the biggest challenge facing silver explorers, developers, producers are inflationary costs, or would you disagree with that?
No, that's not the biggest challenge.
Okay.
The biggest challenge, I would say, is regulatory challenge, political risk, and particularly the regulatory hurdles that you have to go through now. It takes a very, very long time to get permitted. Some regions just for exploration drilling, and certainly for mining, it almost doesn't matter what country you're in anymore. And then a part of that, of course, is the social license that you have to gain now has become very prominent and very heavy. But I think the single biggest is the regulatory regime in the different countries that you're dealing with, and the timelines to get work done.
Jason, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think the fact that you used to go try to get a permit for drilling, and the regulator you deal with would be able to give you a timeline, and it would be, when I started in this business, it was fairly reasonable, and now they won't even give you a timeline in a lot of cases, depending on where you're working, but it just takes so much longer. So I agree with Jim wholeheartedly on that. I do think when you're talking silver specifically, I think the volatility, and Steve kind of touched on it, the volatility in the silver market has always been there, and we see that. And so, in the last, say, week or so, you've seen maybe financings drop a bit, share prices come off. Jim touched on it. There's that nervousness that the silver investor has, that also hurts. So if you didn't get in your financing done in the last month or so, maybe it's a little more challenging. So we'll climb that wall of worry here for a while if we indeed are in the early stages of a bull market and get through that. But that volatility, I think, does play a part for silver investors, and especially at for companies like ours at that discovery stage.
Anybody else?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things too is so much of what we're dealing with is out of our control. I mean, we can lobby, we can try to express what's going on and how it benefits us or causes us problems. But I think at the end of the day, one of the big things is project selection and jurisdiction selection and putting those pieces together. I mean, we're really lucky that the project we're working on this summer is in Elko County. It's going to take us 4 to 6 weeks to get our permitting. And we already have permits on some of our drill pads already. And, it's one of the things that I think is going to become a bigger factor, particularly moving forward. And, it just reinforces the idea that you need to focus on high grade, big projects, because whether it's a low grade asset or high grade asset, there's going to be a lot of work that has to go into putting it into production. And so, whoever ends up doing that, whether it's a major or a junior, you want to do that with the kind of project that's worth it, worth that time, worth that effort, because, that's how you create generational wealth.
All right, last question for each of you, 45 to 60 seconds, if possible, and we'll wrap it up here. We'll keep it going with Lauren. If you could lay out what you think are the key factors in the bullish case for silver and how your company, Raina Silver, is positioned to benefit.
Well, I think silver is a fantastic metal. I mean, it's both a resource and a commodity. It's it comes along with many friends that can also allow you to have your cake and eat it too. And, whether the market pays attention to that and we see the bullish run that I think, we're all optimistic for. One of the things that, and I feel like a broken, I keep saying this, but, so much of it comes down to the quality of project that you're selecting and what you focus on, and that allows you to be buffered from that. And it's also how you get the most leverage to, if silver goes for a run, those high grade deposits go that much further, and you're not sitting there worried about what happens when silver comes off. And if a silver investor is skittish about what's it going to do, it's reinforcement to focus on the kind of projects that you're still excited about when silver was, down low. And, it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of, the next couple of years. And, I'm definitely excited for it.
All right. Thanks, Lauren. Let's go in order here. Jim, Jason, Steve, as we go through your thoughts here to wrap it up.
Okay, so on the macro with regards to silver, it's been running a structural deficit for several years now. It's creating a tightness that when the monetary demand really begins to kick in, then it could be very explosive. We've seen this historically; it repeats itself. So it's an outcome we believe is going to happen. Lauren's absolutely correct. We can't predict the future. We don't really know. We're looking, but we're looking at the macro, what's going on. That's our belief. Project-wise, we're Cutney Silver really well situated for that sort of scenario with a huge inventory of silver in the ground, plus a brand new high-grade discovery, which of course works in any silver environment. The quality of the high grade is something Lauren's mentioned a few times now, and it certainly is, to go to an old adage, grade is king. And so we're really well situated, whether silver moves or not, but especially if it does. And of course, I've touched about that. We certainly believe it's going to go on a great run here. And we're probably at the beginning of that now.
Jason?
Yeah, I think, as I touched on earlier, we really see kind of two mega trends coming together here: the economic sort of political situation that will drive precious metals, but then you have the intersection with this industrial demand that we've all talked about. And I think those two combined are really a strong macro case for silver going forward. And we talk about that quite a bit here in our office, just about where the silver market might go. As for Silver North itself, I think, where we add value, regardless of what the price of silver does, is adding, silver ounces to our portfolio, making discoveries, drilling, making new discoveries, adding on to what we've got. And that's really where the value for anybody looking at our company is. We have a $7 million market cap right now. We make a new discovery either with Coeur, our partner at Tim, or up at Haldane in the Keno district. That's where, as Lauren said, generational wealth is created. That's where, our market cap goes from 7 million to much, much higher, just because of the discovery of those ounces. So for anybody looking at Silver North, I think you look at us this year, we'll have 2 active drill programs. That's two projects that can make discoveries, and that is where the value is added for a company like ours.
Last word to Steve.
Yeah, I mean, on the macro side, I agree with what all 3 people have said before me here, but it's just, you do have this kind of perfect storm brewing of right now. You've got the above ground supply is disappearing. You've got reserves and resources are disappearing. We've talked about politically how it's harder and harder to permit things. So even people that have, and there's not that many, but people, and a lot of them are in this room, have assets that have exposure to, quality silver that might make sense at the prices we're seeing today, because, our grades are higher or better than a lot of our peers. If we're going to even start to tackle on the ground side what it's the amount of silver it's going to take to replace those reserves and resources, and the increased demand on the industrial side, I mean, just on a simple supply and demand, and it's going to take much, much higher levels of silver to make, the sub tier, the average, projects that are out there right now. And even then, I don't think all those resources replace what's coming off in the demand side. So, we do need, 10 years ago, we needed $25 silver for the producers to break even or make a little bit of money. Now, with inflation over the last 10 years is $30, is kind of the number that gets thrown around a lot that people need to see before they start to get excited about silver. We need much higher numbers to even make a lot of the deposits that have resources on them economic to get going. People talk about all-in sustaining costs. well, if you pay attention, those are still not the true numbers of what it actually costs to run those companies and make things go. I mean, we used to have cash costs was the number, and that was the most manipulated, worst number in the industry. They replaced it with all sustaining costs a little bit better. And Jim's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. But it's the numbers are much higher. Like mining companies are great at hiding costs and bearing costs, as accountants and moving things around. So we need probably $30 silver to break even on good assets or average assets that are primary silver focused. So again, there's a perfect storm out there. We need higher silver prices to start bringing on new projects, or a lot of the new projects, especially the primary silver ones. And then from a company side, obviously, I love that we've got 60% gold, 40% silver. Our grade for similar types of deposits in the state of Sonora is very, very good. We bring that exposure to the silver upside at 40%. You talk to Sprott or some of these other funds that own, our companies, they say at 40% silver, we're one of the higher percentage silver companies they own, because they've had to diversify, because there's not a lot of quality silver exposure assets out there, and they want more, more and more gold exposure. So again, I think as a company, we're very well positioned. We have a lot of what Jason and Jim and Lauren, we all have, new discovery potential and expanding on new projects, which is a good market, is going to drive a lot of value your way, while also, in Jim and Lauren's side, where we already have existing resources that we're going to get exposure to as metals move up, both on the gold and silver side. And as people start coming back into the sector and looking for those quality assets, it's companies like ours that are going to be the first to see that investment and see money pour back into. But the sector as a whole is going to rise, and everyone's going to do well in the sector as we move into a rising silver and gold market.
Well, great insight from all of you today. We really appreciate it. You gave us a lot to think about. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you down the road. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
And thank you all very much for watching. A reminder, you can watch a replay of any or all of this show on Red Cloud's YouTube channel, Red Cloud TV, RCTV. Check that out. Also, go to Red Cloud Financial, redcloudfs.com. All sorts of great content there, video and otherwise, on the mining sector and specifically on companies. And speaking of companies, why don't you go to redcloudresearch.com? It's complimentary research on there. You get some really great insight from our analysts about various companies, and also macro pictures on various commodities as well. Thanks again for joining us today. We will see you next time. Take care.